October 17th, 1903. Before sunrise touched the ridges of Black Hollow, the body of 26-year-old Eleanor Whitford lay at the bottom of a narrow ravine behind her family's estate, her white nightdress torn by briars, her throat marked by a single, deliberate wound. By noon, the news had traveled the length of the valley. By nightfall, the questions had begun. Who would dare harm the only daughter of the Whitford family? Why had she left the house in darkness? And why did so many in Black Hollow seem prepared to say so little? At the turn of the 20th century, Black Hollow was a coal town pressed between steep Appalachian hills, its streets carved from red clay and coal dust. The railroad ran like a spine through the valley, carrying black rock north and money south. The miners lived in narrow company houses that leaned against one another like tired men. Above them all, on a rise overlooking the town, stood the Whitford estate, a 3-story brick home with wide verandas and tall windows that caught the morning light long before it reached the hollow below. The Whitfords had arrived 2 decades earlier, when the land was still forest and promise. Charles Whitford, Eleanor's father, purchased mineral rights from struggling farmers and built one of the region's most productive mines. His wealth grew as the town grew. He funded the church, the schoolhouse, even the small hospital near the tracks. In public, he was spoken of as a benefactor. In private, he was known as a man who expected loyalty in return. Eleanor was his only surviving child. Her mother had died when she was 10, and from that point forward the town watched her grow into the role of heiress. She was educated in Richmond, returned each summer to the Hollow, and by most accounts possessed a quiet intelligence that unsettled those who mistook her for ornamental. Some said she intended to modernize the company, as to improve safety conditions in the mines. Others whispered that she questioned the very structure that had built her family's fortune. In the months before her death, the town was restless. A cave-in at Shaft 3 had taken the lives of 4 miners. There were murmurs of union organizers traveling through nearby counties. Charles Whitford publicly dismissed the unrest as outside agitation, but inside the estate, arguments were said to echo down the halls. Servants later recalled raised voices between father and daughter, though none claimed to know the cause. On the evening of October 16, 1903, Eleanor dined with her father and 2 business associates from Pittsburgh. The meal was formal. The servants described her as composed, though quieter than usual. After dinner, she excused herself early, claiming fatigue. She was last seen alive at approximately 10 o'clock, ascending the main staircase with a candle in hand. Sometime during the night, she left the house. There were no signs of forced entry. The doors were locked from within. A side entrance near the kitchen showed no damage, only the faint impression of a shoe in the damp earth outside. The following morning, a groundskeeper discovered her body in the ravine that cut behind the estate, a place overgrown and seldom visited. The local physician declared her death the result of a sharp blade to the throat. There were bruises along her wrists, though faint. No weapon was recovered at the scene. Sheriff Amos Klein, a man who owed much of his position to Whitford's support, arrived before the body was moved. By midday, he announced that there was no evidence of robbery. Jewelry remained on her person. The motive, he stated, was unknown. The inquest was brief. Witnesses were few. The servants testified that they had heard nothing unusual. Charles Whitford, pale and controlled, stated that his daughter had been troubled of late, but offered no specifics. When asked whether she had enemies, he paused before replying that wealth often invites resentment. Rumors, however, moved more freely than official statements. Some townspeople believed Eleanor had been meeting someone in secret, perhaps a miner, perhaps a traveling organizer. A stable hand claimed he had seen her speaking to a young man near the tree line days earlier. Others insisted that she had discovered discrepancies in the company's ledgers, payments diverted, safety inspections falsified. There were even whispers that she had threatened to expose certain practices that would have shamed the family name. No such allegations were entered into the record. Within a week, suspicion turned outward. Sheriff Klein detained a miner named Thomas Hale, known for speaking openly about unionization. He had once been dismissed by Whitford management after an argument over wages. Hale denied ever meeting Eleanor privately. There was no physical evidence tying him to the crime, yet he was held for 3 days. When released, he left Black Hollow before winter. The case stalled. Winter settled over the valley, quieting conversation beneath snow and necessity. Work in the mines continued. The Whitford estate lowered its curtains. Oh, Charles Whitford rarely appeared in town without a black armband. In December, he announced a donation for a new library to be built in his daughter's memory. The town accepted the gift. Few mentioned the ravine again, but certain details refused to disappear. A seamstress who had altered Eleanor's dresses told a neighbor that the heiress had requested simpler garments in recent months, suitable for walking beyond the estate grounds. A maid recalled finding a folded letter in the fireplace grate weeks before the murder, partially burned, bearing only the words, "It cannot remain hidden." She could not say whose handwriting it was. In early 1904, a traveling reporter from Charleston arrived, drawn by rumors of unrest and the unresolved death of a wealthy young woman. He interviewed miners, clergy, even Sheriff Klein. His article, published that spring, described Black Hollow as a town divided between gratitude and fear. It noted the brevity of the inquest and the absence of a clear suspect. It questioned whether justice could be impartial when power and investigation shared the same porch. Shortly after the article's publication, the reporter received a letter urging him to leave well enough alone. He did not return. Charles Whitford died in 1908 of what was described as a sudden illness. With no direct heirs, control of the mines passed to distant relatives and investors. Over time, the company changed hands. Shaft 3 closed. The estate was eventually abandoned, its windows broken by weather and neglect. As decades passed, Black Hollow thinned. The railroad reduced service. Young people left for cities. By the 1930s, the Whitford house stood empty against the hillside, overlooking a town that no longer remembered clearly how it had once begun. Yet among the older residents, Eleanor's name lingered. Some believed she had fallen victim to the very system that enriched her family, silenced because she knew too much or cared too deeply. Others maintained that her death was personal, the result of a secret attachment or betrayal hidden from public view. A few insisted that the truth had been known all along, but buried for the sake of stability. There are no surviving trial records because there was no trial. No weapon was catalogued because none was officially found. The ravine behind the estate has since filled with brush and fallen timber. If evidence once lay there, it is long returned to the soil. What remains are fragments: a death certificate, a brief inquest transcript, a newspaper clipping questioning the silence of authority. And beneath it all, a town shaped by coal, wealth, and the quiet understanding that some questions are not meant to be asked too loudly. On clear autumn mornings, when fog clings to the hills of what was once Black Hollow, the outline of the old estate can still be seen against the ridge. Visitors sometimes walk the grounds, unaware of the ravine hidden beyond the tree line. There is no marker where Eleanor Whitford fell. No plaque bears her name in the hollow she once overlooked. The forgotten murder of the Heiress in Black Hollow remains unsolved, not because it lacked suspects, but because certainty was never permitted to take root. Whether she was a reformer silenced, a daughter caught between loyalty and conscience, or a young woman entangled in private conflict, the truth rests somewhere beyond the reach of surviving records. And so the questions endure. Why did she leave the safety of her home that night? Who waited in the darkness below the estate? And who, in the days that followed, decided which truths would be spoken and which would be carried quietly into the Appalachian Hills? History often remembers the powerful, but sometimes it is the silence around them that speaks the loudest. What do you believe happened in Black Hollow that October morning in 1903? If stories like this matter to you, if forgotten names and buried truths deserve to be remembered, consider subscribing to this channel. Each episode uncovers another hidden chapter from history that time tried to erase. Watch the next story and decide for yourself what was lost, what was hidden, and what still waits in the silence.